Thank you, Patty. And thank you, Chris, for agreeing to do this and making the time available. And thank you to all the viewers out there who are participating. This should be a very interesting evening, especially if, like me, you've been a business journalist. And I have been one, as Patty said, for 40 years now. That's a big number. I picked up Chris's book. Here it is. I have a lot of Post-it notes on mine with great interest because I worked at Business Week for 20 years and then for 5 years at the New York Times as on the business desk as the deputy enterprise editor and then as the economics editor in Washington and now at Bloomberg. And so I was ready to be defensive. You know, I was ready to get my fists up and my elbows out. And as I was reading it, I found that I was shaking my head in agreement quite a bit. So I would like to walk you participants through what I learned in reading this book, and I learned a lot, even though it's been my career for 40 years. So I want to start off by saying that Chris Roush is the Dean of the School of Communications at Quinnipiac University in Connecticut. He previously spent 17 years at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where he was a professor, a senior associate dean, and director of the master's program. He is the author or co-author of 10 books, including a business journalism textbook and a biography of former Wall Street Journal editor Vermont Royster. He is a board member of the Foundation for Financial Journalism, and he has worked at a number of local and major metropolitan city newspapers like the Tampa Tribune, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and the Sarasota Herald-Tribune. So I want to start off, Chris, by asking you if you could just kind of go through the trends that have hit journalism in the last few decades. And by that, I mean the trends that we all know about that have harmed our profession, that have left a lot of us unemployed or working in other areas, and that have destroyed newspapers and so forth. Sum up some of those trends, and then at the end, talk about how business journalism has been affected by those trends.
Sure. Thank you so much, Paula, and thanks to the Overseas Press Club for inviting me. I think we have to start with the internet and how the internet has impacted traditional print publications in that as the internet became more available in the late 90s and the first decade of the 21st century, more and more people were going to the internet instead of going to a traditional print publication to find their news, whether it was business news or anything else. And unfortunately, for the most part, we had a lot of daily newspapers, magazines, whatever, posting their content on the internet and posting it for free. And so consumers are not dumb. You know, would they rather get this content for free on the internet, or would they rather pay for a subscription to the actual print publication and get the print publication? Of course, they're going to cancel their subscription and go to the internet, because except for the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and a couple of other large publications, you know, most newspapers and magazines and news organizations were giving away their content for free on the internet. So to me, that's kind of what started this broader impact. I think the whole concept of, particularly for daily newspapers, providing or stopping to provide printed stock listings in the daily business section kind of signaled the death knell of most business news coverage in daily newspapers, because that was kind of the backbone of a daily business section at a newspaper. And so without the stock listings to provide a standalone section, most daily newspapers stopped covering a lot of business news and started cutting their business news staffs. So that was a big impact. There's the trend of advertising, in that advertising started shifting away from print publications and towards online publications and putting ads on websites. I think that was a major trend as well. I think we also have to look at, excuse me, a couple of other trends. One, as you know in the book, is just the increasing politicalization of news and political coverage, I think has led to a lack of emphasis in business and economics news. And when business and economics news is covered in any depth, it's often covered from a political angle. And then I think we have to look at social media as well, and that social media is distracting a lot of people away from reputable news organizations, and looking at social media and seeing things that may or may not be true and are not coming from a reputable news source. So I guess those are the I guess the highlights that I would point out.
Or the lowlights. So any journalist is familiar with all of these forces. And so talk now about what happened in particular in business and financial journalism, because as your book explains, as local newspaper business coverage went downhill and disappeared, as did many local newspapers, there was this simultaneous rise of gigantic financial media companies like my own, and some others too. And so why didn't that compensate for the loss of local news coverage?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the book, to me, there are really five kind of major giants in business journalism. There's Bloomberg, there's the Wall Street Journal, there's Reuters, there's CNBC, and there's the New York Times. And they provide incredibly valuable business news coverage and do a great job. I have no complaints about anything that they do. And I used to work at Bloomberg and have always been impressed with that news organization. But what they're really doing is providing business and economics news to a very high-end clientele, and a clientele that can afford to pay $25,000 for a Bloomberg terminal on their desk, or they can pay, sometimes thousands of dollars for multiple subscriptions to multiple different publications to get a variety of really in-depth and nuanced business and economics news. But that doesn't really provide what the 30 million small business owners in this country and the 100 million consumers in this country really need to make important business and economics decisions. They're providing really kind of macro business news that's important to investors, that's important to somebody trying to make a $100 million decision on whether to invest in something. But that's not really what the broader society needs. Again, there's no problem with what they're covering and reporting on. And obviously there's a demand for that type of business and economics news in society. But it's not what the 95 to 99% of
so tell us a little bit
need.